Advocate Norman Aronson, Senior Counsel and Chair of the University of Cape Town Council. Emeritus Professor Linda Roney, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning and Acting Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. Professor Lionel Green-Thompson, Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences. Dr. Shahim de Vries, Chief Executive Officer of Groote Hospital. Professor Glenda Gray, President and CEO of the SAMRC. Dr. Bhavna Patel, previous CEO of Groote Hospital. Professor Soli Beneta, Emeritus Professor of Medicine and previous Chair of Medicine. And Dr. Sadiq Karim, representing the province. To the members of the Department of Medicine, current and past, members of the University of Cape Town at large, and my colleagues from Groote Hospital. Esteemed guests, colleagues, my dear friends, and members of my family. It was with deep humility and a singular pleasure that I stand in front of you to have been given the opportunity to serve and to lead the Department of Medicine at the University of Cape Town and Groote Hospital has been one of the greatest honors and privileges of my life. This department, this university, and this hospital, which I deeply love, where I have spent more than half of my life, have provided abundant affection, meaningful friendships, and academic stimulation, all in equal measure, bringing to me great fulfillment and meaning to both my personal and professional life. There is so much to love in this vibrant, diverse community that I have come to call home, which in my view represents the best qualities of both the academy and the public health system. Surrounded daily by these brave women and men who epitomize loyalty, commitment, compassion, and unbridled commitment to improving our public health and to pioneering scholarship, I constantly felt like nothing was impossible. And this was the greatest gift they could give to me. No praise can be too high. This combination of qualities I have come to appreciate is rare indeed. To each and every one of you, I wish to express my sincere gratitude for your mutual affection, your accumulated knowledge, and your distilled brilliance, all which, like the stars in the night, though they are hard to reach, provided navigation during my leadership. You all have my admiration and devout thanks. I wish to thank Professor Lionel Green-Thompson, Emeritus Professor Linda Roney, Dr. Shahim de Vries, and especially Emeritus Professor Marian Jacobs for the warm and exceptionally kind and generous introduction, far more kind than I could ever aspire to merit or ever hope to deserve, but that in no way diminishes my gratitude. I shall remember and cherish your words forever. As you will know, a valediction or a valedictory speech is given at the end of an academic career, which is perfectly in keeping with the Latin ancestor Valedictory, which means to say farewell. The tradition of formal valedictory speeches for academics date back to the early 1600s. In thinking about tonight's lecture, I found myself having significant disquiet, and my greatest unease about preparing for this lecture has been threefold. First, the fact that I'm not really leaving UCT. As I will remain a research professor here and have my research group based here. And two, as valedictory lectures are often events that come at the end of an academic career. At the age of 47, I feel like my own research career has not peaked, and I am definitely not at the end of my career. And third, an overwhelming sense of fear that in speaking my truth, I may offend. Inaugural and valedictory lectures tend to be, by their nature, introspective affairs, an opportunity to reflect on one's career, professional experience, and contributions to the academy. Done well, these lectures provide imagination, confrontation, challenge, and hope, all in equal measure. In thinking about what I may wish to say today, I look back on my career and the important contributions that my students, the colleagues in my research group, my collaborators and partners have made to scholarship. But science is ever changing, and the things we may choose to celebrate today may be obsolete tomorrow. I also looked back on the substantial and incredible contributions to clinical service and innovative scholarship by members of the Department of Medicine during my tenure as its chair, and these have been ample and substantive, with many notable achievements along the way. But this is not a time to gloat. In the end, I decided I would rather focus on my reflections on my leadership in a time of complexity and some of the lessons that I have learned in leading this great department. Why should I choose reflection over celebration, you ask? Reflection provides perspective, allowing us to see different places, different times, different cultures, and to appreciate different values from our own. Importantly, in a world increasingly characterized by receding global solidarity, reflection emerges as an even more important tool to transport us from the temporal parochialism which says, the only time is now, and away from the geographic parochialism which says, the only place is here. So I choose to share my reflections in the hope that they may enlarge thinking, they may lengthen perspectives, broaden horizons, extend sympathies, and generate some humility about how we see our place in the world and how we think about our times and our values. If I or members of the department that I have led stand tall It's because we stand on the shoulders of giants. As the 8th chair of medicine at UCT, I wish to acknowledge my predecessors, all who led this department through times of great strife and challenge. Without exception, all had their challenges and all of them triumphed, resulting in a department characterized by resilience and a common sense of purpose. The Department of Medicine at UCT and at Valedictory has recently celebrated 104 years of existence. The first professor of medicine, Obas Falconer from Aberdeen, Scotland, established the then Division of Medicine at the new UCT Medical School in February of 1920. He contributed greatly to the establishment of clinical teaching then at Somerset Hospital. In 1938, Valedictory Hospital was opened, at which time Falconer retired as a professor of medicine to become the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. The legendary combination of Professors Jack Brock and Frank Foreman, joint leads of the department from 1938 to 1954, succeeded Falconer. Medical student numbers increased, and the emphasis of the department was naturally on clinical teaching. While Foreman inspired generations of medical students in the finest traditions of clinical medicine, Brock was appointed professor of medicine at the age of 33, laid enduring strong foundations for medical research in this department and faculty. In 1954, Professor Brock assumed the sole headship of the department. During this period, from 1954 to 1970, the department expanded through an establishment of multiple specialist clinics and increasing research. The era of expansion, arguably representing the golden era for our department, saw publications grow from 2 papers a year to over 100 peer-reviewed publications a year a decade later. Specialist clinics like the Cardiac Clinic and many others fostered innovation and made possible great medical achievements, such as the first heart transplant at Valedictory Hospital. Professor Stuart Saunders succeeded Brock in 1971 and successfully steered the department through turbulent times. The political repression of the 1970s significantly impacted on the life and work of the department, resulting in a major exodus of highly qualified staff in 1977 and 1978, following the school risings against Bantu education. Chronic healthcare budget cuts and the flight of staff to the private sector or overseas continued in the era of Professor Solly Beneta between 1981 and 1999. Professor Beneta, despite these challenges, stabilized the department amid an increasingly hostile funding environment. Professor Ralph Cash succeeded him in 1999, and the department was soon a sound one, highly respected, both in relation to its teaching and clinical services, and continued to increase its research output, and contributed significantly to a culture of harmony and unity in our faculty. In 2006, Professor Bongani Mayosi succeeded Cash and grew the department into one that was larger and stronger, ready to meet the challenges of a rising burden of disease and shortage of health professionals in this country. During this time, the proportion of Black professionals grew to 50% of the department. As the 8th chair of medicine, I inherited the finest and largest department of medicine in Africa, a tribute to the fighting spirit of my predecessors in ensuring the survival of academic medicine in Cape Town, often under difficult conditions. And over the last 8 years, the department has grown substantially, both in size and complexity. And by whatever metric of success one uses, has continuously improved. It is now also the most transformed academic department in the University of Cape Town. I wish to thank my family for the gifts of time, presence, and understanding, and for selflessly giving me the time and space to spend countless hours leading this department and working, whether at home, on the road, or in the office. Their understanding and unwavering support allowed many of the gains we achieved during my tenure as head of department. And to them, I am immensely grateful. I'm delighted to be joined today in person by my father, Obele, my mother, Ntobeko, my 2 brothers, Uyani and Sipho, my cousin Noltando, my uncle Marco, and my biggest fan, my daughter Mila. I wish to acknowledge my partner Nabila, who is unable to attend tonight's event as she is out of the country, and my stepmom Tammy, and my older brother's wife Liviwe, both who are also unable to attend tonight's event, as well as the many members of my extended family who have joined online. And a big hug to my second mom, Kay, who is joining and listening from the US. If my tenure has in any way been a success, I wish to thank and acknowledge the substantial and unseen work of my personal assistants, who through countless hours daily, little sleep, consummate dedication, and huge personal sacrifice have been the heartbeat of both my office and the center of our department. I don't think I've always been the easiest colleague to work with, but these gentle and beautiful souls have put up with my idiosyncrasies and supported my work and that of the department selflessly and admirably. No thanks can ever be enough. Currently, Ms. Dolis Wakupiso and Ms. Lydia Brown, both sitting at the back, tell me what to do every hour and manage my life. I also wish to recognize my benefit from the contributions of Ms. Nandi Makatesi, Ms. Janine Christians, and Ms. Naledi Salugana, all whom I am most grateful to. I've been supported in this role by 2 capable operational managers, without whom my work would not have been possible. Mrs. Lorraine Wakefield and Mr. Mzwandile Ntamo, both in the audience. I've also benefited tremendously from the unwavering support of the Ntobeko Hospital executive over the years. And I wish to acknowledge the former CEO, Dr. Bhavna Patel, the former COO, Dr. Bernadette Ike, and the many medical managers I have worked with, and in particular including Doctors Eda Byman, Hafiza Aziz, Laureen Boyens, and Ntobeko. In Graham Matthews, I had a fantastic second chair of medicine, a clear thinker with strong convictions, and a worldview that was sometimes different from mine. He provided enormous support and the right balance I needed in leadership of the department. A better co-pilot to fly through the turbulent years with, I cannot imagine. For nearly a decade, as the sun rose at dawn and the moon shone small and gave us in the evenings, I daily entered and exited the hallowed halls of the old main building at Ntobeko Hospital. This would be the first and the last sign I would see every day, a call to action. My beloved colleagues in the Department of Medicine, deeply loyal and committed, are people I would go to battle along with every day, who have the rare skill to gently yet resolutely form deep connections and having an understanding of our common goals. Each and every member of this fine assemblage of our many teams, distinct and true. All, even the most heroic and likable, were flawed in some way. Real people are. And the true beauty lay in our collective imperfections and constant darings. To me, all will be utterly forgettable long after my last page in this role has been turned. I would be remiss in not acknowledging our external partners, donors, and alumni who enabled our aspirations in the period of ever-dwindling resources. Without their friendship and support, many of our endeavors never have reached fruition. I wish to pay tribute to my students. I'm not sure what they have learned from me, but I know that I have learned much from them. Teaching undergraduate students and supervising and training postgraduate students have been the most rewarding of my professorial responsibilities. And I have been grateful to the department for having placed so much stress on the quality of our educational offerings. But above all, my greatest teachers have been my patients. No patient quite the same as the last, all with much to teach, making medicine the most humbling of professions, as none of us can ever claim to have mastered it. And in my view, there can be no more noble a calling to serve the most needy in our society when they are at their most vulnerable. I'm grateful to my patients and their families for having allowed me to enter their lives for brief moments or sustained periods, and to contribute in small and big ways toward their health and well-being. I thought I would keep comments about myself quite brief. After all, historicizing yourself is a most uncomfortable thing to do. What does one say about oneself? It often all seems rather arbitrary and rooted in narrative convenience. Nevertheless, as you heard, I was born in Umtata in 1977, then the public of the old Transkei, the capital of the old Transkei. Together with my two brothers, I had an idyllic childhood. My parents, on the other hand, cannot quite say the same. From humble backgrounds, they succeeded against all odds and against a system of apartheid that curtailed all aspiration for most Black South Africans. How different my life has been from theirs. I obtained terrific education in my primary schooling, through my high school, and through my university studies. I trained at the top universities in the world, all paid for by my parents and through scholarships, meaning that I would complete my studies without any debt. Probably my most formative experience were my years at Haverford College, a liberal arts college in the US, where I majored in molecular and cellular biology with a minor in medical sociology. Rooted in Quaker traditions, the college had an honor code which started in 1897 as a simple system for holding exams without proctors. It subsequently became the purest expression of the college's values and an intrinsic part of a Haverford education. The honor code held members of the academic community accountable for their words and actions through building an ethic and an ethos of personal integrity and a value system that has permeated much of what I have done since. I studied medicine at UCT and completed my internship at Freya in East London. I returned to UCT and Groote Hospital to train as a physician while doing my research towards a medical doctorate in cardiovascular medicine, focusing on the natural history and clinical and molecular genetics of cardiomyopathy in Africans. My mentor, the late Bongani Mayosi, convinced me that I need to travel to see the world and to learn from the best. I left for Oxford, where I completed a Doctor of Philosophy, also in cardiovascular medicine, studying the role of cardiovascular magnetic resonance to stratify phenotypes and disease mechanisms in autoimmune forms of inflammatory heart disease. I returned to UCT and Groote Hospital to complete my training in cardiology. And at this stage, I had to stop studying and to look for my first job. And the job that was available was the chair of medicine. There was some pressure to consider applying, but I was not convinced it was what I wanted, or that the timing was right for me. So I called Janet Segi, a trusted teacher and confidant, to ask her for advice on what to do. She demanded that this was not a conversation to be had over the phone, and that she needed to look me in the eye. And in explaining to her why I may consider applying, I convinced myself that I had something to contribute. And I have remained grateful to her for that catalytic conversation all these years. So it is with great humility that I look forward to commencing my second job. So this was my first day in the office as a chair of medicine. All I had in my possession was a pencil case and a farewell photograph from the cardiac clinic. For comic relief, I add a recent photograph where you will note that the passage of time has not been kind. I'm a bit rounder and much grayer than I started. But that first day in my new office, I suddenly had many of my former teachers lining up to ask for advice or to bring their historic conflicts to my attention. And it dawned on me that I had not quite realized what I had signed up for. So I frantically read countless books on leadership. At the time, I did not realize that nothing prepares you quite like experience. An article in the Harvard Business Review of 2007 titled Leading in Complexity by David Snowden and Mary Boone struck a particular chord, and I kept going back to it, always finding new meaning. To quote from this piece, wise executives allow a tailored approach to fit the complexity of the circumstances they face. In the same piece, they describe a professional world that is increasingly characterized by lack of predictability and increased complexity, volatility, and chaos. Later, they ask an important question. Why do leaders fail? I quote, why do these approaches fail even when logic indicates they should prevail? The answer lies in a fundamental assumption of organizational theory and practice that a certain level of predictability and order exists in the world. This assumption is grounded in the Newtonian science that underlies scientific management, encouraging simplifications that are useful in ordered circumstances. However, circumstances change, and as they become more complex, the simplifications can fail. Good leadership is not a one-size-fits-all. Many of the things leaders are called to do in complex situations, for instance, leading change or shaping culture, require fundamentally different leadership and personal capacities from the ones that they have spent a lifetime cultivating. In the complicated space, leaders have at least the hope of certainty, whereas in the complex space, they do not, and pretending they do will consistently lead to failure. Becoming clear about purpose, direction, and boundaries is a large part of the work of leading strategy in complexity. It provides a frame in which people can make their own decisions about how to proceed. And by virtue of the office that I have occupied in the last 8 years, I have had opportunities to provide leadership in complex national and global platforms. In this university, I've been privileged to serve on the executive of the UCT Council, the highest decision-making body in the university, on the executive of the Senate, the body accountable to Council for regulating the academic functions of the university, and as a trustee of the UK Trust in the UK, engaging with alumni and donors and conducting development work in England and beyond, and many other roles. And for me to have served in these roles has been a great privilege. but has also incurred significant personal cost. All these experiences constantly reinforce the thoughts I articulated on leadership. So what does complexity look like for me? So this is a timeline of my leadership as a head of department at UCT, and you will see there was hardly any reprieve, with each passing year with ever escalating numbers of challenges. These have included the Fees Fall movement, and at the time I started at UCT, significant austerity measures both in the province and in the university. The tragic and untimely passing of Professor Mayosi cast a dark shadow on much of our work and existence. And in 2019, the riots and looting that affected all of the country have a tremendous impact on many of our staff in the department. We had change in the deanery coinciding with the outbreak of COVID-19. And this was the beginning of a period of increasing pressure on our registrars and medical officers. 2022-2023, we saw a depleted national fiscus and a university quite unstable at the top. And in these last few months, a budget crisis and a university facing financial precarity. And at this time, we welcomed a new executive at Proteskia. And what has characterized my leadership throughout this period has been a constant of being asked to do progressively more with less. So, what is the meaning of all of this? What is the worth of what I have said? And what lessons have I learned from my leadership as the chair of medicine? In reflecting on my leadership on complexity, I wish to share with you 10 lessons. In the Department of Medicine, I've been surrounded by the smartest people, the most caring cadre of professionals. With them on my side, nothing felt impossible. And over time, a big part of my work has focused on aspects of culture, how we build a sense of belonging in an organization where people can thrive to reach their personal and professional goals. I have learned from people that all of us have foibles, and in leading people, leaders need to be sensitive and alert to these foibles. So to sum up what I have learned about people and looking after them, I wish to borrow from the words of Adam Smith, a Scottish philosopher and political economist, who in his book titled Theory of Moral Sentiments states, "Man naturally desires not only to be loved, but to be lovely, or to be that thing which is the natural and proper object of love. He naturally dreads not only to be hated, but to be hateful, or to be that thing which is the natural and proper object of hatred. He desires not only praise, but praiseworthiness, or to be that thing which, though it should be praised by nobody, is however the natural and proper object of praise. He dreads not only blame, but blameworthiness, or to be that thing which, though it should be blamed by nobody, is however the natural and proper object of blame." I can attest that these words could not be truer for members of my department. Be it in belief in the beauty of our dreams or other, belief in beauty is important. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a motivational theory in psychology that explains the 5 different levels of human needs. This theory, created by Abraham Maslow, is based on how humans are inspired to satisfy their needs in a hierarchical order, starting from the bottom going upwards. The 5 needs are physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and ultimately self-actualization. These needs have recently been updated, and more recently to include cognitive, aesthetic, and transcendent needs. So cognitive needs arise when you start getting curious and desire to explore and gain knowledge, as well as understanding and wanting to know more about what interests you. The aesthetic includes appreciation, stability, the search for beauty. Transcendence is motivated by values that go beyond the personal self. Examples include supernatural experiences, nature experiences, aesthetic experiences, sexual experiences, service to others, religious faith, and the pursuit of science in its purest form. In a time of complexity, successful institutions are replete with individuals whose cognitive, aesthetic, and transcendent needs are constantly met. Both the hospital and university, where I've worked for so many years, spend a lot of time talking about the importance of succession planning. However, we do a great disservice to ourselves by paying lip service to this important concept. And each time there is a change in leadership, there is frequently a crisis about who may be identified to apply. And when these individuals apply, they are often disadvantaged by having had minimal preparatory experiences for the role. Institutions like Proteskier Hospital and the University of Cape Town, if they are continuing to lead with excellence, need to be intentional about identifying and growing the next generation of leaders. Leadership development is a must-have for any self-respecting organization. It helps employees to grow and teaches them to lead while developing their leadership skills and qualities to become better leaders of tomorrow. It also demonstrates a commitment to employees about the value that is seen in them. Such mindfulness also helps institutions to better understand what they need to do to succeed in the future. Many of the leaders I have come across are experts in firefighting. When genuinely needed, this is of course an invaluable skill that can save organizations from collapse. But to be clear, firefighting really is not the same as being responsive to changing dynamics. It's an adrenaline-intense activity, and the immediacy of outcomes can be highly seductive. So much so that some leaders become addicted to firefighting. In these instances, long after the crisis has been resolved, they look for fires and even start fires so they can once again save the day. This behavior is exhausting for the people they lead. A solution that is designed to achieve short-term success often has unintended consequences in the long term and rarely will take you towards your strategic goals. Managing complexity requires innovative solutions that may seemingly have very little to do with the present problem. To solve intractable problems, the focus must shift to longer-term systemic issues beyond putting out the fire in front of you. Leaders who can manage competently in the context of complexity are essential in this modern world. Leaders who have the foresight to see these future opportunities are the ones who will assume future growth of successful organizations. I have traversed the corners and length of this country and continent. And everywhere I've gone, I've asked people the same questions. What do you think of the University of Cape Town? And the responses have been much the same, both in this country and all over the African continent. People tell me, we know you guys are good, but you need to remind us of your status as the #1 university on the continent at every possible opportunity. They tell me we collaborate with scientists from Harvard, Oxford, Yale, Cambridge, Princeton, and they never start every conversation or presentation by telling us about their rankings. I always find this embarrassing. As an institution, we have a pathological obsession with rankings. And in my view, this focus is misplaced. Many of our systems and processes have not evolved nearly as well to ensure that UCT will remain a leading institution. If the recent proclamation of our faculty as the place of the stars, even if it's a celestial reference, feeds into this narrative of an institution obsessed with its status and its sense of self in the world. In Othello, William Shakespeare writes, "Reputation is an idle and most false imposition, often got without merit and lost without deserving." In many of my dealings with colleagues at UCT and Valedictory Hospital, I've come to appreciate how important reputation is for individuals and for institutions. Of course, I'm the first to speak about the value of a personal brand. But how we are viewed by others is often fleeting. Sir Winston Churchill, giving a eulogy at the death of Neville Chamberlain, late in 1940, commented on the vicissitudes and fluctuations of reputation, not just Chamberlain's, but more generally. He remarked, "Men seem to have been right, men seem to have been wrong." Later in the same sentence, he observes that when the perspective of time has lengthened, all stands in a different setting. There is a new proportion. There is another scale of values. Indeed, a profound observation on reputation and its fleeting nature. My view is that a greater focus on impact would not only cement a lasting legacy, but also is likely to preserve a good reputation. Focusing on impact would necessarily provide perspective that should diminish our arrogance about the importance of our place in this world. UCT and Valedictory Hospital are national monuments of global repute that deserve protection at every cost. Progressive austerity is untenable and unsustainable and undermines all that we do. And in my view, is likely to diminish the impact of our work in the future. In preserving these two great institutions, like the great tides, we can ensure that their impact in lifting all boats, our sister institutions in the country and continent. These two great institutions have faced countless challenges over the past decades and have demonstrated outstanding resilience in overcoming them, to a large degree due to the singleness of purpose and cohesion of the community members. To my great sadness, I am leaving a university and a hospital that are their most polarized since I have known them. In a world characterized by polarization, there can be no winners. Identity politics are cheap, but incredibly harmful. The courage of this department, our resolve against all odds, has been to question the world as it is and to imagine a much better one. By continually committing ourselves to our central purpose with renewed vision and vigor, we advance the prospects of humankind. Courage is also imbued in the story of progress of our hospital and university, from the dark history of apartheid to a welcoming environment enriched by a collision of different backgrounds and beliefs. Our stories and the stories of the many trailblazers who came before us are linked by our institution's history of exclusion, the long journey of resistance and resilience to overcome it. To borrow from Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Constantly questioning our reality is an important mechanism for us to achieve justice. As a leading department, we need to do much more to restore the public's declining belief and trust in the value of public health, science in general, and in higher education. In a world where access to the Internet of Things is ubiquitous, everybody has become an expert. And trust in government, in the academy, and in science has been significantly eroded. Many members of our society operate in the outer spheres of this cartoon. In our system, the burden of expectation on Black leaders is substantial. I am aware this is not unique to UCT and Groote Hospital. Black leaders are the ones often tasked with leading the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, expected to sit on multiple committees to ensure adequate representation. This is both an individual and organizational challenge, and the time to act with conviction to change must start now. We embrace diversity of backgrounds, lived experience, and perspective as a departmental and institutional imperative. We do this because we believe in the value of dynamic engagement and the enrichment and learning that happens when ideas and perspectives collide. The story of transformation is also about conquering our past and ensuring equality and equity in all engagements. I wish to pay homage to Professor Stuart Saunders, a brave man who left the chair of medicine and, like Falconer before him, went on to be Vice Chancellor of this university. As chair of medicine, he admitted Brian Kiss, the first Black registrar at Ntobeko Hospital. He would also be the first Vice Chancellor to allow Black students into UCT residences. So a new era begins, and I wish the 9th chair of medicine, Professor Mashiko Setsedi, well in her tenure. As the first female chair, she is charting a new course. And like her predecessors, I have no doubt that she will face her fair share of challenges, but I also know that she will prevail, and she knows that she can always count on my support. Finally, it has been the greatest pleasure and privilege to have been gainfully employed to do what I love most, daily indulging my intellectual curiosity, contributing to clinical services and care, lecturing curious undergraduates and working with the most brilliant postgraduate students, having the companionship of brilliant and exceptional colleagues, and contributing to public life in this country and beyond. I titled my talk, Many People, One Voice. When I reflect on the many achievements during my leadership, the single enduring and enabling factor has been how we have used our diversity to bear on our common purpose and unity in action. My dear colleagues, it is with great humility, gratitude, and goodwill that I relinquish the chair of medicine and the headship of medicine at Ntobeko Hospital. Thank you.